Welcome to the deep dive. We've got quite a bit of source material here today.
Yeah, it looks like an educational resource focused on gold IRAs and, the whole precious metals industry landscape.
Exactly. And our mission really is to unpack this source, figure out the most important points, and help you get a handle on how to identify trusted companies if you're thinking about precious metals.
Especially for retirement, right? Through those precious metals IRAs.
That's the focus.
Yeah,
So let's maybe start there. The source material emphasizes that precious metals are, well, they're different.
they really are. Very different from your typical stocks and bonds. Understanding that difference is, I think, the essential first step before you even think about who to invest with.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Why are they different? What makes them stand out? The source points to their intrinsic value.
Mm-hmm. Intrinsic value. Think about gold, silver. They've been seen as valuable for, well, centuries, millennia even.
Across different cultures, different economies, it's not tied to one company's performance, is it?
Not in the same way, no. Or even a specific government's currency, really. And crucially, they're tangible. They're physical assets.
Right. You can actually hold them, unlike a stock certificate maybe,
Mm.
or just numbers on a screen.
Exactly. And that tangibility, plus that long history as a store of value, that's why the source positions them as, a potential way to diversify.
Diversify portfolios, maybe protect wealth, especially when things feel uncertain economically.
Yeah, that's often the argument. When other assets might be fluctuating wildly, precious metals have sometimes shown a different pattern, kind of a hedge.
Okay, so if they have this unique role, how do they fit into something like retirement planning? The source brings up the precious metals IRA.
Right. So what is that exactly?
Good question. What does the source say it is?
Well, fundamentally, it's a self-directed retirement account. So it's structured kind of like a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA that you might be familiar with.
Okay, but instead of holding stocks or mutual funds,
It's true.
you're holding physical precious metals, specifically IRS-approved forms of gold, silver, platinum, and palladium.
Ah, so you get the tax advantages of an IRA structure, but the asset itself is physical metal.
Precisely. It's presented in the source as a way to bring that, potential diversification and that tangible asset protection right into your long-term retirement strategy.
And the source really hammers home one point here, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Choosing a reputable company to help you navigate all this is, well, it's paramount. You can't overstate it.
Why is that choice so critical? What makes a trusted company different from just, a place that sells gold?
Well, the material we looked at makes it pretty clear. A top-tier company should be doing a lot more than just selling you metal. They act as a guide.
A guide how?
They should be providing education, offering tools, helping you understand the market and how precious metals might actually fit into your specific financial situation.
So it's less about the transaction and more about the strategy behind it. Exactly. They should have a grasp on the bigger economic picture, things like inflation, interest rates, geopolitical stuff, and how that might affect metal values.
Can help you tailor it.
Yes, crucially, help you think through what mix of metals might align with your goals. Are you mainly looking to hedge risk? Are you hoping for long-term growth? It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all thing.
That makes a lot of sense. So, okay, let's get down to brass tacks then.
Right.
What are the key things, the non-negotiables, that the source says you absolutely need to look for?
All right, the source lays out several really crucial criteria. First one, maybe the most obvious, reputation.
Okay, reputation. What does that look like in practice?
You need to look at what other customers are saying. Check out online reviews, testimonials,
Well,
but don't just look at the positive ones.
right, dig into the complaints too.
Yeah, definitely. How many complaints are there? And importantly, how did the company handle them? Were they resolved fairly? That tells you a lot.
Okay, reputation first. What about the money side? Fees, pricing.
Transparency. This is huge. The source is really strong on this. You need clear, upfront pricing. Understand all the costs.
All of them. Like what?
Purchase price for the metal, obviously, but also any commissions, account setup fees, annual administration fees, storage costs. It should all be laid out clearly. No hidden charges popping up later.
Straightforward pricing builds trust, basically.
Absolutely. And speaking of trust and rules, compliance.
Ah, that sounds important, especially with the retirement accounts.
Well, it's massive. This isn't just about ticking boxes. It's about protecting the tax advantage status of your IRA.
How so?
If the company isn't super rigorous about only dealing in IRS-approved metals, or if they don't use IRS-approved storage facilities, you could face, pretty significant tax penalties. Or worse, potentially disqualify your entire IRA.
Wow. Okay. So compliance isn't just paperwork, it's fundamental to the whole thing working.
Absolutely fundamental. The source stresses that companies need ongoing measures to stay up to date. Getting this wrong turns a potential asset into a real liability, fast.
Okay, that's a critical warning. What about when you need help or have questions?
Customer service. It needs to be good. Really good. The representatives you deal with should actually know their stuff.
Knowledgeable, yeah.
And reachable.
Knowledgeable, patient, and accessible. You're bound to have questions, right? About the process, the market, your account. You need to be able to get clear answers in a timely way. It's about having a partner you can actually talk to.
Makes sense. And what about the actual products, the metals themselves?
That leads to selection. A good company, according to the source, should offer a decent variety of IRS-approved precious metals.
So not just one type of gold coin.
Right. Different forms like various coins, bars,
Yeah.
maybe gold, silver, platinum, palladium. This gives you options to build a holding that feels right for you within your IRA.
And storage options, too.
Yes, and that's key. Secure IRS-approved storage is mandatory for IRA metals. They should offer options maybe domestic, maybe even offshore, depending on what you're looking for.
And getting your existing retirement funds into this new IRA, that sounds tricky. It can be. So look for companies that explicitly say they'll help with rollovers and transfers from existing accounts, like a 401k or another IRA.
Them handling that smoothly is probably a good sign of their overall competence.
It definitely suggests a higher level of service and, frankly, expertise in navigating the rules.
Okay. And the last criterion the source specifically mentioned, we touched on it earlier, education.
Yeah, this loops back to them being more than just sellers. It's about empowering you, the investor.
How do we do that?
The best companies provide resources, things like articles, guides, maybe webinars, stuff that helps you understand what drives the metals market, how to think about your investment, how it fits into your bigger financial picture.
So they want you to understand what you're doing, not just buy something.
Exactly. An informed investor is usually a better long-term client, right? And hopefully makes better decisions for themselves.
Okay, so we have those core six: reputation, transparency, compliance, customer service, selection, and education. The source also mentioned looking at sort of outside signals.
Right. Consumer opinions and industry endorsements. This builds on reputation but looks broader.
How so?
Well, reading testimonials and reviews on independent platforms, not just the company website, can give you a real feel for day-to-day service and how they handle things.
And industry endorsements, like what?
Look for ratings from organizations like the Better Business Bureau, the BBB, or the Business Consumer Alliance, the BCA. A high rating, like an A+ from the BBB, suggests the company is committed to ethical practices and, importantly, resolving customer issues.
That was like getting a third-party check on their reliability.
Kind of like a preliminary stamp of approval, yeah. From groups that are supposed to be watching out for consumers.
Now, the source also took a brief step back to talk about evaluating the metals themselves, because even with a great company, investing always has risks, right?
Absolutely. Let's be clear. Precious metals are not risk-free. Their prices can go up, but they can also go down. Fluctuation is part of the deal.
But the source notes their unique characteristic.
Yes, that historical performance as tangible assets. They've held value over, incredibly long periods. So when you're evaluating, the source suggests looking at long-term historical price charts. See the bigger picture.
But not just looking backwards, right? Need to consider today and tomorrow, too.
Precisely. You have to factor in current market trends, what's happening with the economy, geopolitics, things that affect supply and demand right now.
And the source had that interesting example about future demand.
Yeah, that was fascinating. The point about new technologies, specifically electric vehicles, increasing the industrial demand for metals like palladium and platinum.
That's a great illustration. It's not just about history or hedging. There's modern innovation creating new reasons for demand.
Exactly. It shows that evaluating metals means understanding both their ancient role as maybe a store of value and their evolving place in the, modern technological world.
So bringing this all back home, connecting it to you, the listener, the source really emphasizes one crucial point.
And it's so important. There is no single best company out there for everyone.
It's subjective.
Completely subjective. It depends entirely on your individual needs, your particular financial situation, and what you are trying to achieve with your investments, your goals.
So the real task isn't just finding a company, it's finding the one whose approach, whose guidance, whose services really mesh with your unique circumstances.
Yeah, to help make sure your retirement strategy feels solid to you. Their expertise should ultimately serve your objectives.
And the source wraps this up with a very practical piece of final advice, doesn't it?
It does, and it's the essential takeaway, really. Before you sign anything, before you commit,
Do your homework.
conduct your own assessment. Ask yourself, does this provider truly align with my unique situation, my financial goals, my objectives? Use all those criteria we discussed: reputation, transparency, compliance, service, selection, education as your checklist.
Okay, so just to recap this deep dive into the source material, we looked at why precious metals are seen as distinct investments that intrinsic value, the tangibility.
hmm We covered what a precious metals IRA is designed to offer as a retirement savings tool.
And then we spent a lot of time on those absolutely essential criteria for vetting the companies that can help you. Reputation, transparency, compliance, customer service, selection, education.
Plus, looking at those external signals like consumer reviews and industry ratings,
Right.
all drawn directly from the educational resource we reviewed today.
So as a final thought for you, the listener, to
Yeah.
maybe chew on, consider that interesting tension the source highlighted. Precious metals, assets valued for centuries, almost timeless.
Right, ancient value.
And yet, modern technology, like electric vehicles needing palladium and platinum, is creating entirely new demand for them.
Yeah.
How does understanding that dynamic, that interplay between ancient asset and modern innovation, fit into your thinking about your own long-term financial picture?
It's definitely a fascinating intersection to ponder, where history meets the future in your portfolio.
And please remember, just as the source itself emphasizes, everything we've discussed here is for educational purposes only, based solely on the material provided to us.
Absolutely. You should always consult with a qualified financial advisor, someone who understands your specific situation before making any investment decisions.
Get advice that's tailored specifically for you.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for listening.